Welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf. That's the Hall of Famer Chris Carter. That's Nick Wright. Hey, guys.
Good night, Jenna. How are you?
I'm good.
We got to all hang out together last night.
It was fun.
Not watching sports.
I like socializing with you
we haven't
guys.
done outside of work in quite some time. Hang out when there was not sporting involved.
Instead, there was a wet carpet.
Fox up front's involved. CC was very popular amongst the celebrity crowd, which is good to see.
It was a good night.
Yeah, it was fun.
Good night.
It was absolutely
great game last night.
Great game. A lot of fun last night.
We had a good time. I actually was able to streamline right into the game from being social with you guys. So I got to do the best of everything. Watch sports and hang out and tell fun jokes with you, Nick. It was
Jenna's off-air humor, if you can believe this, almost as good as her on-air humor. I'll let the audience figure out what that means exactly.
No, they know. Just like that, the Houston Rockets' home court advantage went poof.
Just like that.
Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals last night, Rockets and Warriors. We wanted a good fight. We got a good fight until the Rockets stopped fighting. James Harden was awesome on offense, scoring 41 points, but the Warriors were more awesome on offense. They beat the Rockets 119 to 106. So Kevin Durant was the difference in this game, 37 points and what felt like 200 mid-range buckets. How good was KD? Here's his head coach, Steve Kerr.
Kevin is the ultimate luxury because a play can break down and you just throw him the ball and he can get you a bucket as well as anybody on earth. So Kevin, you know, this is why this is why anybody would want him on their team. But you think about a couple of years ago and we're in the finals and we couldn't quite get over the hump. You know, Kevin's a guy who puts you over the hump and I don't know what you do to guard him. He can get any shot he wants.
I mean, I don't know if we're at our peak. I think we could be better. I mean, the stakes are high. I mean, we playing the Western Conference Finals against the best team in the league, number 1 seed, and MVP on their team. So, I mean, I think everybody just wants to enjoy this time hooping. Not a lot of people get this opportunity, so we want to take advantage of it. You can tell everybody is just very excited to be here.
So I think everyone thought this was going to go one of two ways. Either the Warriors were going to be the Warriors that we knew they could be and just absolutely dominate, or the Rockets were just going to come out, take advantage of being at home, and do the same thing. And it turned out it was the Warriors. Cece, how do you think they were able to just absolutely own the Rockets last night?
Well, it was a very entertaining game. I wouldn't go as far as to say that they owned the Rockets last night, but this was what Golden State can do. They come at you in waves. You could see even when Houston scored, you didn't have time to celebrate, because Golden State pushes it back down to the other end, and they will take a shot within the first 5 seconds on the shot clock. But what I thought was the difference in the game was Golden State's ability to be an elite defensive team. We never give them credit because they have all the names, they have all the shooters, all the scorers, they have Draymond as a personality, Steve Kerr as a coach, which we never give any type of credit to. But defensively, to me, they're the best defense in the league. And the reason why is because not only because the threat they put on you offensively, but they can, because of their overall length, they can shut you down. We saw within the first 18 minutes of the game, 3 times Houston shot clock violations, and many other times where they were pressed against the clock to try to get a good shot.
To your point there, CC, 19 times the Rockets got their shot off in the final 5 seconds of the shot clock. I know you had brought up before the show about the shot clock violations, so I dug into it a little more.
Yes.
3 actual violations, another 19 possessions where you're up against the shot
Right,
clock.
so we talk about a Houston offense, one of the most efficient in NBA history, now rushing to try to run their offense. I thought they became too one-dimensional with the high pick and roll, was letting Harden being the dominant ball handler. I thought they were easier to defend compared to moving the ball, which we had seen them do since they had added Chris Paul to the lineup. But ultimately, Kevin Durant picked up right where he was last year at the NBA Finals, where he was the MVP. He let people know the reason why. And he talked about it in his interview afterward. Kevin Durant is not about the drama. He's about hooping. And this Golden State team, for the first time going on the road to start a series, you could see that their focus was there. But there is no answer for Kevin Durant in the NBA. Like the coach said, Steve Kerr, he said, as far as offensive player, you want a guy who can get you a bucket better than anyone on the planet, it's Kevin Durant. And that's what we saw last night, and that's the reason, the difference between Golden State and the Houston Rockets.
And when Kevin Durant is only asked to get you buckets, I don't know what you're supposed to do. Through 3 quarters, Kevin Durant had this stat line: 30 points, 1 rebound, 0 assists. KD was very good defensively. He was part of the entire Warrior crew.
Yeah, and the reason why he didn't get a lot of rebounds was because he was playing on the perimeter, and there wasn't a lot of long rebounds, compared to what he normally gets, 7 to 9 rebounds a game.
Right, but the Warriors have the ultimate luxury, which is they can ask one of the all-time great shot makers in NBA history, a guy who we talked about the interview we did with Bill Simmons, where he said, he talked about him versus LeBron. He said, LeBron spends a lot of time working on his body. I spend time working on my game. I want to be able to make every shot on the court. And if you look at his shot chart last night, that's what he did. Every quadrant of the court he scored from. Close middle, medium middle, far middle. Everywhere on the court he scored from. And when you have talent around him that denies your ability to send a double team at him, you just have to hope he misses. Like, there is no answer for it. If you could double him, you could still get the shot over the double team, but at least you would have a better chance. You can't double anyone on Golden State. And so when you add to that, Trevor Ariza, who was the defender who had the most success on him, got in early foul trouble, and then Andre Iguodala did something brilliant when they left Ariza in with 4. The next time down the court, went right at him, so Ariza picked up his 5th. Then all of a sudden, the Rockets are just hoping KD misses. And then you add to that Cece's point, which is not only this great team defense, but the guy that I believe over the last 4 years has been the single best defender in the NBA, Draymond Green, who was not worried about anything but defense. You have a team that steals home court advantage from a great basketball team, and a team that drastically changes how anyone who picked the Rockets, myself included, feels about this series.
Talking about Kevin Durant, he's a 7-footer who has the ball handling skills of a point guard and the mid-range jumper, which you saw a million of last night, of a shooting guard, and then goes out in the press conference and says, oh, we haven't reached our peak yet. We still have so much more to do. Did you feel that way watching this game last night? Did you feel that there was another level that they could take this game to last night?
I mean, that's just a common answer. I mean, because the game was highly contested. They weren't lights out. Steph didn't play great. I mean, if you look at it, one of the reasons why Houston couldn't win was they couldn't force the ball out of the big three's hand. They took 75% of the shots. Clay, KD, and Steph, 75% of the shots. If you give the Warriors, those three, 75% of the Warriors shots, they're going to beat you. Unless they just have a complete, totally off night.
That's the most big three have taken in any game all year, to Cece's point. That's the highest percentage of any shots the big three have taken for the Warriors in a single game all year.
Yeah, so if you don't do that, if you don't find another way for the other to force the ball in the other player's hands, it's going to be difficult. But you can't forget, this is a Warriors team that has been amazing in the 4. This is the last year in a 4-year stretch that they have been amazing. This didn't start last night, but their focus going on the road against a 65-win team, you could see why they've won these championships. Draymond, Iggy, they bring in the center to start the game. Mooney was a huge substitution, bringing him in. So in the pick and roll, he's far more athletic, something you had talked about yesterday, utilizing him. It was an exciting game to watch because this is the best the NBA has to offer. And to me, this is the NBA Finals.
Well, and this is right now this Warriors team, if they continue this going after what they did last year, a team that is now 25-3 in the playoffs since they added Kevin Durant. You're going to talk about them not just as the best the NBA has to offer this year, but ever. This is a Warriors team that has never lost. The Warriors 2.0, the Warriors with Kevin Durant, they have never lost a game 1 in a playoff series. They have never lost a game 2 in a playoff series. They have never been forced more than 5 games in a playoff series. This was a critical opportunity for Houston. At halftime, you thought, okay, they got a shot. And that Warriors third quarter wave, they ended up having a 13-point lead with a few minutes left in the third quarter. Houston cut into it a little bit. They weren't able to do enough. And that's with Harden scoring 40-plus, and with Steph Curry having the fewest points he's ever scored in a conference finals game. That's all bad news for Houston.
We will talk about this from Houston's point of view coming up. But on the other side, is Game 2 a must-win now for LeBron and the Cavs? We'll break down the Eastern Conference Finals. That's next on First. This is the First Things First podcast, the episode brought to you by forhims.com. It's time to discuss an issue that you may not want to hear. 66% of men lose their hair by age 35. But good news, it's easier to keep the hair you have than to replace what you lost. How will you feel a year from now if there are bald spots creeping up? Well, here are your options. Do you want a bald spot to pop up or your hairline to recede, or do you want to do something about it first? This is where forhims.com comes in. It is a one-stop shop for hair loss, skincare, and an overall helpful product for men. That's right, thanks to science, baldness can be optional. Hims connects you with real doctors and medical-grade solutions to treat hair loss. There are no waiting rooms or weird doctor visits down a back alley. Just go to forhims.com and take action today. It is so easy. Products will be brought right to your door. Here's how to do it. Order now. Listeners get a trial month of Hims for just $5 today, right now, while supplies last. See website for full details. This would cost hundreds if you went to the doctor or a pharmacy. Go to forhims.com/first. That's forhims, forhims.com/first, forhims.com/first. As far as the Cavs are concerned, second verse better not be same as the first. Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals did not go according to plan for LeBron. Scored just 15 points, turned the ball over 7 times, and had 0 answers for the Boston Celtics. But teammate Tristan Thompson isn't doubting the King will show up tonight.
I mean, usually when LeBron has these kind of games, the next game he does something legendary. But at the same time, you know, we can't rely on that. We got our job to do as other players. We got to be able to help him and be effective. The more effective we are, the more it opens up for him. And, you know, Boston does do a good job, you know, clogging the paint. So if our shooters got to make shots, if our bigs got to get offensive rebounds and finish around the rim to open stuff up, that's what we got to do.
All right, CC, do you agree with Tristan Thompson there? What do you expect from LeBron and the Cavs in Game 2 tonight?
I wouldn't like to rely on that. I mean, even though the Cavs have. I mean, the Cavs, let's just face it, the Cavs are not a great team, all right? They are a bunch of guys and LeBron James. LeBron James is one of the legendary players, but that's all. The rest of these players, no. So they're coming to the gym, yes, relying on LeBron to have some legendary performance. But for me, if I was on the team, I would really be trying to concentrate to make the kind of contribution that would get them a victory. This game scares me, and the reason why is because I believe Boston's a better team than Cleveland. And you can't rely on LeBron James for everything, in every situation. Tristan's there, oh, yeah, in situations like this, typically he turns into Superman. Well, what if he doesn't? They'll lose. Yeah,
Game one is what happens if they don't.
I mean, because if he's not Superman, they're going to lose. For me, I just don't like the overall dependence upon LeBron. There's no way that George Hill plays worse. You know, so they have some. I'm gonna take Nick Wright's theory from the Pacers series. Oh man, there's no way they can play worse. Well, I do believe with Boston's defense, they can force Cleveland and their lack of offense to playing bad. So this is a game that I'm more concerned than I had in game number 1.
The reason I think you hate this mentality or you dislike it so much is because you were a great player. You didn't go into any game saying our best chance is someone else go be great. You went in a game saying, I know I can't do it by myself, but our best chance involves me being great.
But I also played with other players that were a lot better than the Cavs players. I played with 6 other Hall of Famers, and I think the expectations of what we expect from each other was high.
That's exactly my point. Like the Cavs are, absent of LeBron, they would be excited about how many ping pong balls they have in tonight's NBA lottery. That's what they are. If you're a team whose best player is Kevin Love, particularly post-Kyrie trade, you're a team that is one of the 7 or 8 worst teams in basketball. So I understand what Tristan's saying. And they have the evidence of this in the playoffs this year. They've played 12 games. 4 of them, LeBron's been mediocre, making less than 12 shots. Mediocre or just bad to okay, right? They're 0-4. In 8 of them, LeBron's been outstanding. They're 8-0. Like, they go as LeBron goes. Is it an unfair burden? Absolutely. Is it for me frustrating when I see other great players, the ability they have to rely on other great players And then seeing what LeBron has to do, of course. When you see LeBron's game one was the reason they get blown out, statistically, it was almost the exact game one Steph Curry just had in a blowout win. Does it seem like, yeah, there's decks a little stacked? Sure. But that is that's the choice
LeBron made. LeBron was a free agent. LeBron went to Cleveland.
Right. Well, LeBron went to a different Cavs team than this one, but sure, I agree with you. We can't feel sorry. He has basically controlled that roster. Outside the Kyrie trade, he's controlled the roster. Well, the Kyrie trade is an enormous, but you're right. Like, he could have gone anywhere he wanted. He didn't have to sign 2 years ago a 2-year contract, which gave the power to Dan Gilbert to not bring back the GM to trade Kyrie. But to whom much is given, much is expected. Like, what does LeBron need to do tonight? He needs to go out and remind everyone that not only is he the best player in the world, but it's not even close. What does LeBron need to do tonight? He needs to combine for close to 50 points via scoring and assists. Like, that's what he has to do. That is their path to victory. Why do I think he can do it? I've seen him do it half a dozen times just this postseason. I mean, it is an unfair burden, but that's the burden he signed up for.
But you will say that the two defenses that he faced in the Pacers and the Raptors are not in the same stratosphere as what the Celtics offer.
And they didn't have home court. They did have home court against Indiana. The Raptors offered no resistance. The Raptors were beaten before that series started. Yes, the Celtics have a better defense, and the Celtics have home court. I think people can make the case that had the Pacers had home court with the way his supporting cast played, maybe that series goes differently. But I didn't go into this series expecting his supporting cast to be awesome. Now, I didn't expect them to miss their first 14 threes like they did in game one. But how are they going to win? LeBron's going to have to be spectacular.
But his supporting cast has also watched him do this. Every time he goes out and has one of these games, he pulls them by the bootstraps, and they win every single time. So, of course, they know they don't see him going out, having a bad game, them losing, then him going out and doing the same thing over again. They don't have any recent history of doing this. But I ask you, what are your expectations from LeBron tonight? You're usually pretty good at predicting what the next game is going to be.
I think LeBron will have around 37, 38 points and around 10 or 11 assists.
And if he don't, their season's over with.
So you believe if they lose tonight, the season's over?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I mean, how bad does Cleveland have to play? We saw 82 games. Yeah, I know LeBron said they changed 5 different times. Okay. How many games do we have to see with them playing bad to think, man, this is not a good basketball team? See, that's what I've been on that. Man, they're not a good basketball team. I didn't think they were going to make it to the finals. You could only, in these intense environments, you can only play so many minutes of bad basketball. And to me, the Cavs, they're just not a good team. They don't have people that are athletic, can go off the dribble. As far as shot makers, who do they have besides LeBron James? Kevin Love, wow, is he really a number 2? And if he is your number 2, how good can your team be? They're undersized. They're under-athletic. I mean,
they don't have a deep rotation.
Not very good defensively.
In this particular series, they have a distinct disadvantage in my eyes on the coaching, on the bench. But here's the thing. This has been a point of contention with us all year, but we actually agree on it. I agree with you the Cavs are not a great team. All year long, I've never once said I think they can win the championship. But all year long, I have said this. I think this player and this player alone is good enough to get them to the finals. LeBron and LeBron alone was good enough to get them through the first round. In the second round, he was great. His teammates were good. Toronto fell apart, and they sweep that series. I have seen Boston be 2 different teams, home and road. I expect Boston to be very good tonight. I expect LeBron to be better. I expect LeBron to be good enough that they steal home court advantage back from him.
Have we, by any chance, underestimated how good this Boston Celtics team is?
I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't. They are a good team. They are still absent of a star. But in team sports, when you have that type of chemistry that they have, they're an elite defensive team. So anytime you can be an elite defensive team in the NBA, and we try to act as if they don't have talent. No, they do have talent. They do have a lot of players who are like, wow, this kid's starting on someone else's team. Yeah, they have a backup point guard who's also a starting point guard. So, yes, it's hard to say, wow, they don't have. Man, who they don't have. But you have to talk about who they do have.
And if you're, to C's point, if you are an elite defensive team and not an elite offensive team, we almost always underrate you to a degree. We talk about how terrible that Sixers team that Iverson took to the finals was. But they had a defensive player of the year at center. They had great defensive players. So the Celtics are the #1 defense in the NBA for a reason. That part maybe has been underrated by a lot of members of the national media.
All right, let's take a break. Hey, coming up, how much trouble are the Rockets in after getting crushed last night? That's next. First things first. All right, to the NFL now. Giants tackle Eric Flowers finally reported to the Giants facility yesterday. He had been a no-show after the Giants declined his fifth-year option. He was sort of a no-show at left tackle last year. CC, can Flowers have a bounce-back season in 2018?
Of course he can. He's still a young, emerging football player. There's a lot of players that struggle in the NFL. They're just not left tackle, so the whole world doesn't know him. They don't think they're a first-round pick. Fans didn't think he lived up to his potential, but yes, he's a good prospect. I like him back at right tackle. He's more of a natural right tackle, and he's in the last year of his contract. I believe the Giants should keep him, have him opposite of Nate Solder on the left side.
I think he can have a bounce-back year, and maybe he'd be better at right tackle. I don't think he, prior to reporting this week, had handled himself the right way this offseason. I know he was bummed out that they signed Nate Solder and they didn't pick up his fifth-year option, but they didn't do that out of nowhere. They did that because they had some of the least productive play from the left tackle position of any team in the league last season, so he earned this demotion to a degree.
To the AFC West, Broncos president John Elway said his rivals, the LA Chargers, may be the ones to beat in the division. Los Angeles won 6 out of their final 7 games last year to close out the 2017 season. CC, you agree with John Elway?
I don't know if I agree with Elway. The AFC West is stacked, though. The teams are very, very talented. You got question mark in the quarterback in Kansas City. Yes, San Diego is there. How good can their offense be? Mike Williams, the young receiver, we saw him last year, a little bit of time. Him opposite of Keenan Allen, Gordon in the backfield running the football. They have explosive players, but how good can they be? Can they be a top 10 offense? If they can, because their defense will definitely be top 10, they can be scary.
I don't think the AFC West is the best division in football, but I think it might be the most competitive. Like, there's the Chargers, Raiders, Broncos with the addition of Jenna's guy, Case Keenum, and the Chiefs. None of those teams would surprise me if they won 10 or 11 games. Like, I think that's going to be a jam-packed division. I think it's very difficult to pick a clear-cut favorite in that division, more so than any division in football.
Finally, the Supreme Court struck down a law that limited sports betting to the state of Nevada. The ruling is expected to lead to legal expanded sports betting throughout the country. Nick, what was your reaction to the ruling, besides, obviously, euphoria?
Well, this doesn't... People that gamble right now, this doesn't affect them very much. And I would imagine that people that gamble right now, if I'm being totally honest, are going to continue to gamble in the ways they do, if for no other reason than your local bookie tends not to report it to the government for tax purposes. So if you go to the more established, legal establishment, you're going to have to report your winnings if there are winnings. Like, that's just the reality of it. People aren't right now reporting gambling winnings because you're not allowed to be gambling unless you're doing it in Las Vegas. What I do think, though, is for people that don't gamble, or for people that have been afraid to, how do I do it? Will the online sportsbook give me my money? Is the bookie going to beat me up?
Will I get arrested?
Right. For those people, they're going to find, if and when it becomes legalized state by state, that it's easy, that it can be fun, and that can be a way to give you a little enhanced reason to pay attention to blowouts or to follow teams outside of your hometown team.
The Supreme Court justices, they did not do any justice to American citizens. Because doing 15 hours of sports a week, as much as I've been around sports, as much as I think I know about sports, how hard it is to bet. So let me tell you something. A lot of people lost a lot of money on that ruling yesterday because that gambling, I don't know a whole bunch of winners. Now, I know people who say they win at gambling, but I don't know a whole bunch of winners. And I know the National Football League is impossible to pick. So they didn't do, as U.S. citizens, they didn't do us a favor yesterday.
Well, I want to make this clear because I'm probably the resident gambler on this show. No one should look at this as a way to make extra money. No one should look at this as a way that my side job is going to be betting games. You should look at this the way that you would look at spending money on going to the movies or an amusement park or something like that, that you are paying for entertainment. Sometimes you'll get a return on that investment. Sometimes you won't. Cece's absolutely right. It is almost impossible to be a long-term winner, particularly in the NFL. But if it's legal and you have the ability, if it gets really standardized to walk into a game, and as you're walking into the game, as you can do in Ireland and in England and a lot of places, bet on your team or do what the casinos love when you do, which is I'm going to put $10 down on these 6 teams to win to see if I can win $500. Like, that's fun. Like, as long as it's consenting adults and people know what they're doing, I think the Supreme Court did the right thing. It was always absurd that you could do something in Nevada and no other state was allowed to let you do it if they wanted to.
All right, speaking of betting, most people bet on the Warriors last night, so let's get back to the Rockets, who fell to Golden State 119-106 in Game 1. Rockets came out strong, and they finished weak. That is literally the worst recipe ever for a basketball game. Despite 41 points out of James Harden, 23 points out of Chris Paul, it just wasn't enough. Houston now loses the home court advantage they worked 7 months for. Chris Carter, how concerned should the Rockets be that Harden's 41 just weren't enough? I mean, how much more could he do?
I would be concerned because I didn't like the style. I didn't like him being isolated, being ball dominant. I thought when they moved the ball during the season, that's what made them special. There were times during games where they would do what they did last night. Now, Golden State, I believe that's not a way they can defeat them because the matchups they have, they're so athletic and they're so good defensively. So, yes, he had 41, but what did the rest of the players have? You know, and I believe that Golden State, they didn't allow him. He had to work for that. And I believe that it offensively, physically, it's exhausting for Harden. I believe it will play a toll. Not only it played a toll in the second half of the game where he was not as effective on offense and defense, but as we go throughout the series, if it's a 7-game series, as much as he holds the ball, it will have an effect on Harden.
Right now, the Rockets would be thrilled if it were a 7-game series because that means they win a road game. That means that they're able to fight back after a stomach punch in Game 1 because that's what it was. It was an absolute stomach punch. To CeCe's point, if you didn't watch this game closely, but you've watched the Rockets throughout the year and you hear Chris Carter talking, you're probably like, man, that's how they play. They run isolation ball. They lead the NBA in isolation ball. And that's true. But the way they played last night was that on steroids. The Rockets, throughout the year, had 22 isolation plays a game. That led the NBA. Last night, they had 45. The most of any team in any game in at least 5 years. That according to Second Spectrum. You can't beat the Warriors that way. They tried. In the first half, they held them close. But your point about the fatigue and your point about how it stagnates and allows runouts if you turn the ball over is 100% accurate. I know they're the most isolation-heavy team in the league. That's how they got to 65 wins. But they didn't get to 65. They got to 65 wins with the team averaging 22 isolation plays a game, not with James Harden himself having 23 as he did last night.
If you take a step back, do the Rockets remind you at all of the Toronto Raptors? I mean, a team that comes in as the top seed, that has more of the momentum, playing against the more popular team coming in that has like the bulk of the superstars, being at home. You know, you think it might be a close match, and then all of a sudden you see one team gets, I don't want to say blown out, but a little bit more of a tougher competition.
Well, for one, I'm not going to overreact. There's no, besides them being the #1 seed, Toronto having the second best record, there's no way we can compare the teams. And the fight that Houston gave up. Let's not think that we watched a lopsided game. All right? At halftime, the game was tied. All right? We know, and Nick has pointed out, the most dangerous minutes in basketball is the first 3 to 5 minutes of the third quarter of Golden State. And we saw, I think they scored 63 points in the second half. But this was not a blowout. And Houston is far more talented than Toronto will ever be. So I believe this will be a good series. Golden State is the world champ. All right? Toronto got swept by the Cleveland Cavs. A team coming off an awful series where they didn't have any contribution of other players besides LeBron James outside of game number 7. So let's not lose focus of who Houston is compared to who Toronto really is.
But there are some enormous flashing red lights, warning signs for Houston. One, this is the fewest points Steph Curry's ever scored in a conference finals game, and you lose the game by 13 points. Your star, James Harden, as he had in, this is amazing, every game 1 of these playoffs, he's had at least 40 points. Harden was spectacular, and you lose by 13 points. You start the game off the way you would have hoped. The crowd was in their seats. I'll give them credit. Yeah. They were loud. They were locked in. Start the game off with a little push, 12-4. And you lose by 13 points. They did what I thought they waited till the second half to do it. In the second half, they hunted down Steph Curry. They were putting Steph Curry into pick and rolls on every play. He had 5 fouls in the second half, and they lost by 13 points. Listen, I picked the Rockets in 7, right? And I don't believe in changing predictions after one game unless there's a devastating injury, and there wasn't. But you watched it last night, and the Warriors looked like a team that unless something happens, injury-wise, how do you beat them? Like, how do you beat them 4 out of 7? And now they got to beat them 4 out of 6. And now, in my eyes, I don't know how you guys feel. I think they have to win 2 of the next 3, right? Like, they can't fall down 3-1 to this team, right? So they have to.
Golden State is not a team you can think beyond the next game. Like, Nick Wright can do that math. Oh, they got to win 2 out of the next 3. They better try to win the first quarter in the next game, and then try to get to halftime with some type of lead and knowing that punch is coming in the third quarter. They can't even think outside of what's going to happen in the next 12 minutes in that first quarter, 12 minutes in that second quarter.
And just real quick, KD said something very interesting about that third quarter punch, which is he said we don't play better in the third quarter. It's that other teams come out and give us their best punch, and that we are able to maintain our level while they trail off a little bit. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but it was an interesting window into KD's philosophy. He thinks they come out to start the game the same way they come out in the third quarter. It's that their opposition's level of play is what dips after halftime.
Let's talk about the Rockets and their defense. I think we all thought that we would see a little bit more from them. How much did that surprise you last night, CC?
It didn't surprise me based on KD. Ain't no defense for him. I mean, a 7-footer shooting jump shots, you can dribble. There ain't nothing they can do about that. KD was the difference in this game. If KD wasn't in this game or he didn't play spectacular, we wouldn't be talking about Houston's defense. Their defense played adequate enough. Clay, how many shots they forced Clay to? 15 3-pointers to be able to get those 28 points. The defense they played against Clay, there's nothing wrong with their defense, but there's no defense for Kevin Durant.
I agree with C that there's no defense for Kevin Durant, and I actually think in its totality, particularly when you saw what they did to Steph Curry, the Rockets' defense as a whole was pretty good. I know they allowed 119, and I know KD had 37. KD's shots were somewhat unguardable. But you're not going to beat the Warriors if you give them 12 free points because you just lose your guy and he busts open for a three-pointer. There was a play that was a backbreaker, I believe in the fourth quarter, where Klay Thompson caught the ball on the right wing, had time to take a dribble, set his feet, and still have a wide-open 3. Early in the game, there were a couple wide-open layups because James Harden fell asleep. You have to be locked in for 48 minutes defensively. So you can play pretty good defense against this team for 44 minutes, and those 4 minutes, a minute here, a minute there, can kill you.
Their biggest problem with Houston, how they play offense is if they go isolation and Harden goes to the hoop, they are really doing one of the cardinal sins in basketball because their point guard is up under the rim. Now, he's got 90 to 94 feet to be able to get back. Every defense that's ever been created defensively from a basketball standpoint has the point guard back immediately first. So you talk about, man, what else is hurting their defense? Fast break points. So even if they score or Harden's in the paint with a lob, they are still susceptible to the fast break on the other end. And Golden State did that to them, also beat them in fast break points, 18-3. If that continues, it's hard to play good defense when you're giving up that type of edge in fast break points.
And Rockets head coach Mike D'Antoni chalked up last night's loss to mental errors that he said his bad defense, poor shooting, bad timing on the ball. So all 3 things that they have to work on. All right, coming up, could Deshaun Watson already be the second best quarterback in the AFC? It's next on First Things First. Sometimes the grass isn't always greener over there. Sometimes the grass is actually better right here. Just ask Eagles' outspoken and spirited lineman Lane Johnson. He's tired of people assuming the strict Patriot way is better than the looser Eagles way. Lane stopped by our show last week to chat about life as the defending Super Bowl champs. He called the Patriots, quote, a fear-based organization. Yesterday, he doubled down on those comments. Take a listen.
Here's what pissed me off is, the Patriots, obviously, I respect their coach. I respect Bill. I respect Tom Brady. But just because the way they won the Super Bowls, the Patriot way, is that how everybody else is supposed to do the same thing? No, it's not. And that's what I got mad at the arrogance by them. There's obviously some stuff behind closed doors. Their owner talked to our owner. Bill talked to our head coach before the game. I'm not going to say it, but, a lot of kind of built up to that. And I just got tired of hearing about it, man. To be honest,
There are a lot of beeps in that. He sounds angry. He sounds a little bit frustrated. He had a lot to say about it.
No, Lane's fired guy. Lane's fired up. And I couldn't believe, I don't want to say I couldn't believe. I was taken aback by the owner talked trash to our owner, the coach talked trash to our coach.
It was obviously something he heard. He specifically said, Bill said something to Doug. I mean, he obviously knew that there was something said before the game started.
I would just say the reputation of the Patriots around the league, not a lot of people in love with the Patriots. But I don't mind that. They don't like the way they do business. There is a certain amount of arrogance with teams who are successful. There's a certain amount of arrogance and confidence that the Patriots have. I believe there's a proper mixture of both, because everything that they've won in the NFL, they've earned it. Like, they've earned it. Like, he's coached up these players. They have made the plays. They make more plays in big games than the rest of the team. So if that's part of the Patriot way, that's what they do. In critical situations, they play those better than anyone else. And at some point, if I'm Lane, because I got to respect, there's a lot of intel that goes on in the NFL that's not public knowledge. He started letting you know about that. That's the first time we heard about the owner. If there was something between the Eagles owner and the Patriots owner, it's not the first time we've heard about there was maybe a conversation between Bill Belichick and Doug Peterson before the game that Lane is obviously seeing it as disrespectful. But it's May. You're Super Bowl champs. You got to stop talking about last season and start talking about your team. You got to start concentrating on what the Eagles need to do to defend Super Bowl 52. The Patriots aren't worried about the Eagles. They're not talking about you, and you shouldn't be talking about the Patriots. And from a respect standpoint, I heard that, Danny. You put that in there as a disqualifier. Oh, I respect them. Well, I ask you, Lane, if you respect the NFL, get on to the business of the NFL. You are the Super Bowl champs. You do not have to keep addressing the New England Patriots. You don't have to you can cut off the question. You control these interviews. Lane likes being part of the media. It's kind of new to him. He needs to understand that. Patriot questions, right now, they're irrelevant. It's about me and my teammates, and if you want to ask any question about them, I'm willing to address those.
All right, let me just ask you real quick a follow-up on this, because when I heard Jeff Lurie allegedly said something, talked trash to Robert Kraft, and Bill Belichick allegedly talked trash to Doug Peterson, it felt to me like something that right before a Super Bowl or in the week leading up to it, a coach throws in as extra motivation, whether it's accurate or not. And their owner said this to our guy, and you won't believe what Belichick said to me. When I mentioned that to you before the show, you said that can't be the case, that you can't make up that type of lie, so to speak, just to motivate your players.
Yeah, players are smart enough. Players see through things, and players expect you to be honest with them. There's enough things going around the Super Bowl that they didn't have to create. Players don't need to be motivated in the biggest game of their life, especially when it's the Eagles going against the Patriots. The Eagles knew what they were up against.
And the Patriots, do they care? They don't. The Patriots, part of the Patriot way is carrying themselves on some semblance of a proverbial perch, if you will, that they don't listen. They don't need to be motivated by words. They don't clip headlines. They don't care who likes them or don't like them, because if they did, I don't think this would be the path that would have drawn them such success.
That's always the response from pro athletes. They don't care. They don't listen.
You think they care?
Well,
the Patriots?
I know this. I'm not guessing. I watch Tom versus Time. Tom's hearing what people are saying because he's saying stuff to contradict what people are saying. I know they're human. I know the players, even though Belichick would like to perform a certain way, the other players, I know a lot of the players play for their team. They got fun. The players hate the fact that Belichick gets all the credit. Like, we never talk about New England, how good their players are. Oh, it's only Gronk, it's only Brady, and it's Belichick. Those are the only players that they have. The players there, they do care.
There was something else Lane Johnson said in this, though, that I do think is instructive and interesting for the 30 teams that aren't the Patriots or the Eagles, for any team that's going to play the Patriots. And he made the point that he felt like a lot of teams are beat halfway beat, he put it, before they take the field against New England. That the Patriot mystique, the aura of Tom Brady, that it gets in their head and that they don't play their very best game. And Lane Johnson, his point was, man, I'm not going to play a single snap against Tom Brady. I'm focused on their defense. He said, I didn't think their defense was that great. He talked about the yards they were then able to accumulate on the defense. I do think that's noteworthy for other teams. And I also personally am rooting. I know people think I'm not an Eagles, that I'm against the Eagles because I picked against them last year, but I am rooting for the Eagles to have sustained success. Because this Lane Johnson stuff, even if you think it's now too far into the offseason, it's much more fun as a football fan than the Patriot way. It's much more interesting than we're focused on Cincinnati, we're focused on Baltimore, we're moving on to the next week. It is more fun to have some of the soap opera stuff, and if they can be successful despite it, or maybe not just despite it, but in part because of it, that could be good for the NFL.
As Denny Green would tell us, we're paid handsomely to play professional football. It's not high school. It is not college, and people expect a professional performance. It's about playing well. So when I'm not rooting for any team. I'm rooting for good football. I don't care how you do it. I don't care if the guys can be quote machines. I don't care if the guys can't say anything. However you can put a good football team together, and I know there's many different ways you can do it. But in the last 30 years in my association with the NFL, there's been no one more successful than the Patriot way. So I respect that because it's won out over time.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Coming up, can Aaron Rodgers play until he's 40? That seems to be a theme amongst NFL quarterbacks. That's next on First Things First. To the NBA lottery now. The Phoenix Suns were awarded the #1 overall pick in the NBA draft. They had what, Nick, a 25% chance?
They had the best chance of any team, yep.
It'll be the first time the Suns pick first in their franchise history. All right, Nick Wright, who should the Suns take at #1 overall?
I understand there's going to be a lot of noise surrounding DeAndre Ayton. He played in their backyard. I get it. But given the draft capital they've spent on centers and power forwards in the last few years, and given the fact that I think the kid from Europe, Luka Doncic, is pro-ready right now, I think they should, and I think they will take the 19-year-old Luka Doncic.
Yeah, even though Luka Doncic might not be a point guard, he might be a tweener, maybe a two-guard projected in the NBA. I wouldn't take Ayton as a center because I don't believe he can be effective playing in the Western Conference. You have to realize the style of basketball. Right now, the Western Conference Finals, how would he play for Houston? How would he play for Golden State? Or how would he play against those teams? I don't believe it's an effective style to develop a big man like him in the Western Conference.
All right, let's move on to the playoffs. Rockets and Warriors, they face off in Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals tonight. Houston looking to even up the series after losing home court advantage in Game 1. Chris Carter, what's the key for the Rockets to win this game?
They got to be able to move the ball. They got to get into some type of motion offense early in the game to allow the other players. James Harden's got to be able to set the table for the other players so that they get some type of flow of the game before it gets crunch time. You don't want guys not to have a feel before you get into the fourth quarter.
Listen, you've got to do what you did against Steph Curry, but I would argue need to do it earlier as far as trying to get him involved in the pick and roll defensively, get him in foul trouble. They did that in the second half. They drew 5 fouls on him. They weren't doing that in the first half. And on offense, I agree with Chris entirely. You have to give your team more assist opportunities. I know they're an ISO-based team. They were an ISO-based team on steroids in Game 1, and that cost them the second half of that game.
All right, finally to the NFL now. Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers might be taking a page out of Tom Brady's playbook. Rodgers said his goal is to, quote, be indispensable to this organization into my 40s. CC, do you see Rodgers playing this long?
That's the thing. Everybody wants to play. I try to tell you and Nick all the time, oh, this guy should retire. Oh, he should walk away. And go do what? Aaron Rodgers, man, he's born to be the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. Why would he want to go do anything else? If the organization is going to support him, they're going to put players around him. If he's going to have a chance to win championships, why not? With technology, with the way that players eat now, with the facilities that they have, yes, players can play to an extended age. And I'm sure that he sees Tom Brady, he saw Peyton Manning, and I'm sure he sees Drew Brees. And I would say out of those 4 quarterbacks I mentioned, Aaron Rodgers is the best athlete. He's a better athlete than Drew Brees. He's a better athlete than Tom Brady, better athlete than Peyton Manning. And he takes care of himself. So why wouldn't he play as long as possible? It's always been my theory. They have to knock you out of the league. So Aaron Rodgers, he shouldn't be thinking, I like this message coming out of the locker room compared to what I heard from Ben Roethlisberger a couple years ago, right? This is a great game, and you need to play it as long as you can.
And we should keep in mind, while Aaron Rodgers is 34 years old, he doesn't have the hits on him of a 34-year-old quarterback that started from the first day he was in the league because of his time as the understudy under Brett Favre. This is great news.
And his injuries haven't been the type of injuries that would affect his overall longevity.
Right. It's collarbone, and it's stuff that you don't think, oh, this is something that's going to shave years off his career. But this is great news for football fans if Aaron Rodgers does want to do this, because while athletes today do have, because of technology and because of the increased training regimens, the ability to play longer, also because of the money and the ability to have lifetime financial security locked up at an earlier time in your playing career, they don't have as much of the financial incentive as maybe athletes in an earlier era. So I'm so happy to hear this from Aaron Rodgers. I've said for a long time, Aaron Rodgers at his best plays the position as well as anyone I've ever seen play it. For Aaron Rodgers to be considered as good as the all-time great quarterbacks, he's got to get to and win another Super Bowl or two, so the longer he plays, the better chance he has at that. I've seen no deterioration in Aaron Rodgers' skills over the years. I've seen him get better almost year by year of his career. I think he's only 34, so he's talking about 6 more years, 7 more years, 8 more years. It's a long way down the road, but I'm delighted to hear it as a football fan.
Wouldn't you love to see him finish his career in a Packers uniform, too? We just don't see that many.
Yeah, I don't get caught up into that. I don't get caught up in the nostalgia.
I'm full-blown caught up in it.
Well, I can understand, like the Derek Jeter story. Input.
No?
Things happen.
Of course.
People used to say the same thing about Peyton Manning, but he gave us 3 years in Denver that we wouldn't take that away. Things happen. Peyton Manning gets hurt. They end up getting the first pick. They draft Andrew Luck. So what? I'm supposed to wish for him to stay with the Colts? No, of course not. We're not in an era where guys are going to play for one team their whole career.
That's why it's just so rare. That's why you want to see Tom Brady finish with the Patriots, and you kind of want to see Aaron Rodgers grew up in the Packers organization, finish up with the Packers. As a fan, no. Do you?
Yeah, well, listen, if I were a Packers fan, I certainly would.
Well,
I understand the idea that there are times where like Akeem Olajuwon with the Toronto Raptors never felt right. But that was also because Akeem was so far removed from how good he was. But if we look at a lot of the Mount Rushmore caliber players in this league's history, Emmett didn't finish with the Cowboys. Jerry played on a bunch of teams after the Niners. Joe Montana played for my Kansas City Chiefs. He mentions Peyton Manning. Chris Carter. I understand Chris played for 2 teams initially, but Chris's final game was with the Miami Dolphins. There's a famous picture in your office that when you guys, the only 1,000 catch club, right? You, at the time, Tim Brown, yes. Jerry Rice. That was a Dolphins-Raiders game. Only Tim Brown was with the team you really associate him with. And so that's what fans, I'm a fan, but that's fans' selfishness and their attachment to the logo on the helmet, all right? Players want to play. So if you're a fan of the players, why would we rob a player of his career when he can't finish somewhere? Because extenuating circumstances happen for most of the players. But to your point, just quickly, Jenna, I do believe that Aaron Rodgers also would like to finish as a Packer. I think most of these guys would love to stay with their teams. It's very often the team. Peyton Manning didn't want to leave the Colts. The Colts said goodbye.
That's what I meant.
See you
I would, from the athlete standpoint. Now, I wouldn't want him to stick around as a backup. I obviously would want him to play. All I want to do is see him play.
Right.
I just
it would be great if the Packers and Rodgers stayed together.
Sure.
But I would never ask a guy, and I don't think you were, to retire a year early.
Of course not. If there was more football in him. No, of course. All right, let's get back to basketball now. The Celtics remain perfect at home this postseason after beating the Cavs again last night. Despite a 42-point triple-double out of LeBron James, the Celtics were unfazed. They outscored the Cavs 59-39 in the second half. They used a balanced attack to stay in the game. Oh, and also to win it. 23 points from Jaylen Brown, 18 out of Terry Rozier. So the Boston Celtics take a 2-0 lead in the best-of-7. Here's Al Horford on how the Celtics won this game.
We are trying to play the right way, trying to play hard, really just buying into what coaches telling us, and you just have a lot of guys that have a lot of fight in them.
Brad and his coaching staff always talk to us about being locked in the moment, and that was a big thing for us. So we're just trying to stay locked in and focus on each other and really decrease all the outside noise and distractions.
They did what they had to do, and that was protect home, and now it's our time to try to do that as well. So we have a few days, like I said, and we're gonna see what we made of on Saturday.
Do you notice that after every LeBron loss, the cap gets lower and lower until finally he's like, I'm not worried at all. Don't even look at me or ask questions. Nick, how did the Celtics win this game?
Spectacular team defense, unbelievable effort from start to finish, and an unwavering belief that I eventually will get my shots on offense, so I'm not going to force shots. And whether or not the shots are coming to me is not going to affect my effort defensively. And those three areas were the three areas the Cavs, to me, got Fs. Their team defense was pathetic. Their effort was abysmal. And if they weren't involved in the offense, they were not too interested in being involved in the defense. So for the areas where the Celtics were extraordinary, the Cavs were terrible.
Yep.
And that's how you overcome a 42-point triple-double from the best player in the league.
The Celtics, the best defense in the NBA throughout the season. How did they dominate? They played true to form. Their offense has struggled. Played better at home, not only in the playoffs, but during the regular season. But listening to Brad Stevens talk over the last week or so, he talks about now this team has more continuity. You know, they had a lot of injuries, too. We talk about the Cavs and their lack of continuity. The Celtics had a lot of injuries. We know Gordon Hayward early, but throughout the season, and especially after the All-Star break, they are now starting to get their rotations down. The players are starting to get more comfortable in the role that Brad has them playing, and you can start to see this. The difference in this game was they were able to hang in there with the barrage that LeBron put on them early. The reason why? Jaylen Brown. He had an amazing first quarter. The second quarter, they have the ability that the Cavs don't have. Tatum took over it during the stretch there, 5 or 6 minutes, where he was on fire. The third quarter, Rozier took over. And in the fourth quarter, it mounts to Horford and their defense. They only give the Cavs 17 points. So that's how you have a dominant performance that we saw from the Celtics. And to me, I think the overall maturity of seeing LeBron and what he was doing in the first quarter, and then for them to finish that first quarter, to only be 2 possessions down, I thought that was a huge lift to this young basketball team.
And see, you mentioned before the show something that I hadn't seen, which was Brad Stevens before the game talking about limiting the Cavs in transition.
Yes.
He expressed to the team, we are confident in our half-court defense against these guys. We are confident that we can make them take difficult shots. So what did he want to limit them in?
He wants to make sure we get back on defense. Forget what we're doing on offense. He said, pass the ball. You get a shot, take your shot. I'm not concerned about the offense. Let's just make them play against our half-court defense. I like our chances. Let's play hard. Very, very simple. But Cleveland, they're an offensive team dominant. 29th in defense, one of the best teams we've seen in the NBA. If you take away that transition, those fast break points, they only got 16 fast break points in two games. So they've been able to do that.
So before the game in the preview show, there was a little video that we were able to see of the shoot around, or a practice, if you will. And it was so striking to me that Tatum, I guess, was out of position, and Al Horford came over and said, what you're going to want to do is this. You see how you do this? Actually do this. And then I think 2 other guys came over. Like, this is, you called them young. This is a team that's actually still learning how to play together and to teach the other guys. And to have a guy like that play on the same court as a guy like LeBron James, who could just put up a triple-double like it's 42 points like it's nothing, 21 in the first quarter. It's so impressive, and it speaks so much to what Brad Stevens is doing with this group of players.
And it speaks to their overwhelming their talent as basketball players and their minds. Because here's why I bring up their minds, and here's why it matters that Jaylen Brown went to Cal Berkeley when he had scholarship offers from maybe more prominent basketball schools because he was interested in the academics there. It matters that Jason Tatum was one of the few guys Duke says, listen, Duke can have almost anybody. They pick the smartest of the best high school recruits typically. Do you know how hard it is as a young player to play defense in this league? Even if you're a great defender in college, because it's not one-on-one defense. It is team defense. It is recognizing help the helper. It is recognizing when there was a moment last night, I forget which defensive player it was, I think it was Marcus Smart, where you had Jeff Green have the ball in the high wing. Marcus Smart is guarding Korver in the corner, right? Jeff Green has the ball. No one is near Jeff Green. Marcus Smart has the decision. Do I leave Korver, who doesn't have the ball, to go to the guy who has the ball? He said, no. If I do that, it's going to be a corner three for Kyle Korver. That's the best shot the Cavs have.
It was a semi-break in the third quarter.
Yep.
He was in between the players, but he made the right decision because they're going to stick to the three-point line and stick to the highest percentage shooter.
And that's just high IQ defense. Like, yes, Brad Stevens is coaching that. Those guys are going out there and executing it. They're the number one defense in the NBA all regular season, as CeCe mentioned. That's not make-believe. What they've been able to do at home is remarkable to me. But the defense has stuck with them all series, all playoffs, all year long. And you saw it last night. The Cavs were stuck in the mud in the half court, which Stevens said was their goal going into the game.
All right, take a break. Coming up, how come nobody wants Des Bryant? Next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. Former head coach Eric Mangini is back with us.
Coach,
Nice to see you.
brother.
True story. Yesterday afternoon, if you lived in New York, what happened around 4 or 5 o'clock?
It was I was literally grilling.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. By the
Skies
time
get
it was
dark.
lit, it looked like the apocalypse.
I mean, it was black. We were under tornado watches. There was like a horrific thunderstorm that came through. And I swear I said to myself, I bet you Eric Mangini's on the show tomorrow.
Right,
Like, if there is a storm.
I bring the thunder.
I've
Bring
never
the
seen
thunder.
anything like
Yes.
it.
We got a new nickname.
We got it.
Bring the thunder.
Bring the thunder.
Yeah, you can't be Chocolate Thunder. We already have one. We appreciate that, Coach.
But in many ways, you do resemble chocolate thunder. All right, that being said, let us talk about Des Bryant, the NFL's biggest free agent name without a team to call home. That after the Cowboys released him and then proceeded to tell the world how unproductive he is. He's been linked to a few teams, most recently when his former teammate Jason Witten said Des would be a good fit with the Packers. But it has been the case with other teams. Reportedly, the Packers are out on the wideout. Coach, would Des actually have been a good fit in Green Bay?
Well, I think what Jason was getting at was he'd be a good fit with Aaron Rodgers. And he,
Okay.
It sounded like he was saying he needs to go to a place with a quarterback that, like Aaron Rodgers, or someone with that dominant personality that can fit with Dez, or that Dez can respect and will fall more in line with. I think that a younger quarterback with a strong personality could struggle, and that was probably the case with Dak Prescott. So it didn't sound like it was about the actual scheme. It sounded like it was about the quarterback, is what Jason was getting at, and I think that would have worked.
What do you think?
In terms of him fitting with Aaron Rodgers? I think he'd be great in that system, in the sense that Aaron Rodgers can make anybody look great.
Right.
Whether or not Aaron wants to deal with any of the things that Dez brings with him, I'm not sure how strongly he feels about that.
If you didn't have a Hall of Fame veteran quarterback, would you be interested in Des Bryant if you were the head coach of a team?
Well, it just depends on what Dez's attitude coming in is. He's looking for a one-year deal, a deal that he can hopefully springboard into something more significant. So those players are very motivated, and typically those players tend to be more coachable, and those players tend to be more productive. So there is an upside to bring someone in on a contract like that. Now, if it becomes too big of a management issue, or if you think that management issue is going to outweigh the potential of him hitting, then you move on.
Typically, I would be excited about a player that wants a one-year prove-it deal. Is the potential downside to that if you are on a one-year prove-it deal and you do have a history of a volatile personality, that if you're not getting targets, if you're not getting the stats, if you're not getting the ability to prove it, that actually could be a bad thing?
No, because the perfect thing about a one-year prove-it deal is typically it's not a lot of money. So if you don't like the guy and it's not working out, then you cut your losses, you move on, and you've got the leverage from that standpoint. And the player has the leverage if he performs well. Now he's got a chance to negotiate a much higher number.
Yeah, I'm glad Jason Witten, I'm glad he chimed in on this, because his first week as a broadcaster let me know, and I try to tell you this all the time, guys who play in the league, what they know is their division. They know their teammates. They don't know a lot about the rest of the league. So I understand you can campaign for your friends. I've been on TV a long, long time. So I know how that works. You throw out a couple names to try to get them to a couple places, but New Orleans don't want Des Bryant. They have the personnel. They have Michael Thomas from Ohio State. He's a Pro Bowl receiver. He's an ex-receiver. The same thing that Dez Bryant does. So, yeah, of course Dez Bryant would look good with the veteran quarterback. So I understand him saying that. He says Green Bay because of Aaron Rodgers. But they got Devontae Adams. He's a pure ex-receiver. All right? They got Randall Cobb. He's only a slot receiver. And they have another wide receiver. His name's Jimmy Graham. He's not a tight end. He's a wide receiver. So where does Dez Bryant fit to the Green Bay Packers? He's not a fit. Well, by the way, they did draft a guy in the 4th round. 6'3" guy, ran a 4.6 in the combine from Missouri. He's an ex-receiver. They drafted another speed guy from UCF in the 5th round. Now, there ain't no room on the roster for Dez Bryant as far as Green Bay. So, Witten, I appreciate it. I'm glad you're in broadcasting now. Welcome to your first week, but he's making a huge mistake because his style of play does not fit the personnel for what these teams want.
Coach, how much of what teams are looking at with Dez Bryant is style, is play, is on-field production, and how much is the off-field stuff that they're seemingly factoring in? Because there's been very little interest except for the deal that the Ravens had offered him.
Well, yeah, you're going to look at style and where he fits in your scheme. And Chris brings up a good point. Jason Witten, when I looked at the comments, it doesn't make sense from a scheme perspective. It makes sense from a quarterback perspective, but you've got to figure out, okay, how does he potentially help us? How does he work with the other players in the room? How is he going to work with our quarterback? And then there's this cost-benefit analysis of, is the upside greater than the potential downside of what he can bring to the locker room?
See, you've pinpointed one team for Dez all along as the best fit, the best need, the best opportunity, and that's San Francisco.
Yes.
The one thing San Francisco doesn't have is what Coach was talking about, a veteran, proven quarterback. They got a guy who makes the money like he's a veteran proven quarterback, has the security of a veteran.
I don't think that's important.
Okay, that's why I wanted to ask you.
No, I believe now playing with a younger quarterback like Dak, it's not that he's young. Dak has not mastered the passing game. So Dez has been very, very comfortable playing with Tony Romo and talking to Tony Romo at this year's Super Bowl and also hearing his comment. Tony Romo is a brilliant football player. So Dez's ability to ad-lib with Tony Romo, now where else can he get that? All right? He's not going to be a structured route runner. He's not going to beat you with the route tree. You're going to have to be able to add some things, and a lot of times that can only be done by a veteran quarterback. So I understand what Witten, why he's trying to target these types of teams.
See, I like him in Baltimore. I think that's probably the best fit for him. They went and they got Michael Crabtree and they got Willie Snead, but Willie Snead had a down year last year. Perriman, what did he have, 7 catches? There's an opportunity there.
Yeah, he's a bust. Snead's a slot receiver. They could use him in Crabtree.
And culturally, they've been pretty accepting of guys. Now, I'd love to see him in New England. Is he going to become Chad Johnson, or is he going to become, Randy Moss? That's like the truth serum for a guy in this type of position. Let's see what that would look like. Cleveland would be an interesting spot too, putting with the guys that they have there, and Todd Haley has a track record of working with guys that create some potential challenges, and he's always done a good job with that.
Yeah, but Jenna makes a good point, though, because people right now are wondering, man, why he's too good of a football player. Why isn't he playing somewhere? But I believe when you do all the intel on Dez Bryant, there are people with red flags. It's no different than the draft. It's no different than coach. Coach will take you off the board. There are people in free agency that are not looking at Dez Bryant because they do not want to bring his personality and potentially some of the other things. At this point in your career, you can't be worrying about a veteran receiver who's almost 30, and he going to be late? Is he going to be on time? Is he going to be a good influence on my locker room, on my young guys? And the thing that hurts veteran receivers in the month of April and May is if you sign them, they take away all those offseason reps from those younger players. Green Bay drafted 3 receivers. If they bring Dez in, this whole offseason, they're trying to get Dez up to speed. So they're taking reps away from those young guys, which really hurts their overall development and growth.
If it's just about football, though, Coach, what's the ceiling for Dez Bryant? I mean, how much of what we've seen in the last couple of years could we possibly see production-wise?
Well, that I don't understand, because I don't know what type of learner he is. I don't know how quickly he's going to get into a system and be able to pick up the system. Can he really go from spot to spot? Could he play X? Could he play Z? Or is he just purely an X? Could he move around? The concern I have in San Francisco is there's so much shifting and motioning and multiple personnel groups and formations. Okay. That's my concern there, is can he do all those things? And Chris's point about the off-season reps going to the younger guys, that's what you want. But is Dez the type of learner that needs all those off-season reps to be a productive guy? The great thing about free agency in the NFL is you get the best information. You've got enough friends around the league that someone's going to tell you the truth on the guy.
But what you guys are describing, just sitting here listening to it. All right, there's 32 teams in the league. It seems like a lot, right? Okay, about half of them, though, like their receiving core. They either spent draft capital on young guys. They already have too much money allotted to it. They've got it in place. So now we're down to around 16 teams, right? There's, call 4 or 5 of them that just non-football stuff, just off the field stuff. Could he be late? What are the red flags? What are the stories that haven't made it to the media? They've taken him off board. Now we're down to 10 or 11 teams, right? And then there's another 4 or 5 teams like, can he master this offense? Can he do the shifting? Can he play multiple spots? So now we're down to 5, 6 teams, right? So all of a sudden, when you're at this stage in your career, when you're on 3 years of well below Pro Bowl level production, you have on the field red flags. You have off the field red flags. You also are evidently somewhat choosy about the type of contract you want. Those 32 teams become 2 or 3 teams awful quickly. And I think that's what we're seeing with
After
Dez.
15 years in the league, more than half of those being in the Pro Bowl, my last year I had 3 teams calling me. St. Louis Rams, greatest show on. Mike Martz asked me, you want to play the slot? Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt outside. I believe we'll be unstoppable. Miami Dolphins, Rick Spielman knew me from Ohio State, and the Cleveland Browns wanted to bring me back to Ohio as kind of a consolation to my career. That's all I had. I had 3 teams. Great career. I had 3 teams that had some type of interest in me.
Listen, when Dez does finally get a job, it's going to be a sad day here. Because what are we going to talk about? It's actually helping defeat us. Exactly. Exactly. Your second favorite topic. Folks, we'll see you a little bit later on in the show. Coming up, are the Cavaliers in danger of being swept? Not being dramatic. That's next on First Things First. Okay. All right, let's talk Dallas Cowboys now. Quick history. 2 seasons ago, Cowboys went 13-3, made the playoffs. Last season, they went 9-7, missed the playoffs. Why? Ezekiel Elliott sat out 6 games. Des Bryant was average, and Dak Prescott took a step back. Prescott threw 13 interceptions, 3 times the amount he threw his rookie season. But Dak is still confident in his abilities. Here's what he had to say about the pressure of playing for a contract this season.
I want to be the best I can. I want to be the best quarterback that the Cowboys ever had. You know what I mean? So when I go in each and every day, it's just about working to be the best player I can be, and all that stuff comes when you play the game well.
We've talked a lot about the Cowboys, CC, this offseason, between Dak and Zeke coming back, between Dez and Witten not being there. Are the Dallas Cowboys set up for Dak to be a top-tier quarterback with everything they have and the pieces they have in place right now?
Well, I don't know. That's one of the questions going into the season. Can they answer that? You know, is Dak an elite quarterback, and or have the Dallas Cowboys put in a position to be an elite quarterback? And if he's going to be an elite quarterback, first thing you have to do is look at Dallas, what style they're going to play. Offensive line, they got 3 Pro Bowls on the offensive line. They got one of the top 2 or 3 running backs in the NFL. So it's going to be, offense going to be dictated on what they do. So they're going to be a running dominant team. What other quarterbacks have started their career on either running dominated teams or on teams that were defensive oriented, teams that the quarterbacks that have won the Super Bowl? Of recent history, Russell Wilson. Before that, Joe Flacco. And before that, Ben Roethlisberger. All these quarterbacks, especially Ben and Russell, took over defensive-oriented teams when they were very, very young. And that's just like taking over a team that has a dominant running game.
Would you add maybe to that list Tom Brady? When the original iteration
they
of the
weren't
Patriots?
Defensive dominant.
Okay.
I would say they were just a good team.
All right.
I would say in the skill sets of those other 2 players, I'm going to try to tell a story between the 2 of them. And I just believe it's very, very important that how do you change that ID from the team that you took over? Ben, when he took over, they were defensive-oriented, went to the Super Bowl, managed the game. All right, after that, what'd they do? They got Ben some weapons around them. They started throwing the ball a little more, started trusting them. Then they became prolific in the passing game. Russell Wilson, he's very, very similar to Dak. You know, not a high draft pick, took over because either I'm better or a guy's injured. Now, Seattle had a defensive-dominated team and Marshawn Lynch. Got him a couple wide receivers, unheralded. They developed in where they could throw the ball at a high, high rate. Now, Dak, what's he going to do? I don't believe the defense is going to become dominant. Did Dallas get him the type of weapons around him that I believe help him become one of the most prolific offensive throwing teams? No, I don't see that. So if he is not careful, he's going to end up like Joe Flacco. because Joe Flacco took over. They haven't changed their ID.
Right.
But maybe they tried and realized they couldn't. Didn't Baltimore at least try? I mean, they just saw he wasn't able to do it.
Baltimore has never put the necessary resources behind Joe Flacco to help him become an elite passer. Now, people might say, well, Joe Flacco, he hasn't helped Baltimore. But Baltimore has been a defensive-oriented team since Ray Lewis has retired. They're still trying to figure out what their identity is going to be.
Yeah,
but
Flacco, I mean, the best weapon they gave him post-Super Bowl is Steve Smith.
Yes.
At the later portion of his career. That's I think the point is that they didn't, those other teams brought in, Seattle brings in Jimmy Graham, and they developed the young wide receivers. Pittsburgh, we know, they spend high draft pick on Mike Wallace. They also develop Antonio Brown. Like, they give him the weapons. So you're saying Dallas
right now, Dak's best receiver is a guy don't want to be known as an athlete, want to be known as a rapper, and Cole Beasley. I mean, that to me is not setting you up to play great, all right? They need a number one receiver. They don't have one on their roster. And teams, as we saw last year, put more and more people committed to the line of scrimmage. They slow down Zeke. And then what do? Now the rest of the pressure is on Dak, and we haven't seen him grow. And that's the question that he's going to have to answer this season.
I got a question for you here. And if you are a great quarterback, I'm not saying Dak is, but if you are a great quarterback, rank these for me in order of importance. A great offensive line, a great running back, a great wide receiving core. If you're a great quarterback, your wish list, number one would be what?
A great offensive line.
Number two would be what?
In this new NFL, it's hard to say with a running back because there's so many guys that teams that do it by committee. I would say, if he's going to be a special Hall of Fame back, I would say the running back compared to the wide receiver.
Okay, so this is exactly what I thought you'd say. If you're a great quarterback, the weapons around you are less important than, are you protected? And does the other team have to respect the running game?
Give yourself a chance to succeed.
Right. Do you have a chance to succeed? And is the other team's game plan going into the week only about stopping the passing attack, or do they also have to worry about stopping the running game, right?
So you don't know if your quarterback is a great quarterback.
Well, so that's you walked me right into it, Jenna. If you're already a Pro Bowl quarterback, if Drew Brees stepped into the Cowboys, yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers, any of the great guys, they'd be like, this is awesome. I'm never getting hit. My running back's great. I'll make the wide receivers spectacular. Right. But if you're not yet a great quarterback, you might change that order of importance. You might say, man, I'd really like some wide receivers that I know can go up and get the ball for me. Mm-hmm. Someone that I know is going to win 50-50 balls. Someone that I know that if I throw a quick slant to, he can maybe break it open and make those chunk plays. And that's what Dak doesn't have. So in order for the Cowboys' philosophy to make it look like they've got a great offense, Dak then has to be that first group because the wide receivers aren't going to do it for him.
And if Dak is saying, I want to be the greatest quarterback ever, the Dallas franchise have to realize the two greatest quarterbacks they ever had, the great Roger Staubach and Troy Aikman, look at the players they had around them.
Of course.
Not only did Roger have the legendary coach, he had the innovation of the coach, the new offensive thing, first team to go in motion with the shifts and everything, but in the backfield, wide receiver, like Pro Bowl players at that. Troy Aikman, he's part of the triplets. Michael Irvin, Emmett, Hall of Famers, Hall of Fame offensive linemen, Pro Bowl offensive linemen, 3 of the 5. So they had the supporting cast, which supported the quarterback that they could eventually get to that greatness that the both of them reached.
So getting back to what you said, rank what you think that Dak Prescott has. So where, as far as his offensive line, his running back, his running game, and his wide receivers, they have a running game.
I think they have one of the 5 best offensive lines in football, and when healthy, arguably one of the 2 best. I think they have, when healthy or when on the field, one of the 2 best running backs in football. And I think they don't have one of the 22 best wide receiving cores in football.
Okay.
I think that's where they're at right now.
So if you have 2 of the 3, isn't that sort of the Cowboys setting you up in some capacity to be successful?
I think it's setting the team up potentially to be successful, but not necessarily Dak for the progression that we thought he would have.
In the NFL, you move the ball by the running game, but you score the football by the passing game. And right now, they're not scoring enough touchdowns to be able to offset their defense.
All right, cool. Take a break. Coming up, hey, Kevin Durant quotes Forrest Gump. That's next.
Really?
First Things First. Back here on First Things first, we're going viral. The New York Giants have high hopes for their rookie running back, Saquon Barkley. And if his golf game is any indication, they should have no concerns whatsoever.
Bingo, baby. Let's go. Let's go for the gram or the Snapchat.
Was that what was the level of difficulty? Just because I want to make sure there's a proper correlation between
that was about a 9-footer.
How excited they got and how.
Yeah, the percentage on PGA Tour from 9 to 12 feet is probably like 15%, but it's not a lot of guys fitting in the khakis like that. I didn't even know he even made the putt. Now, the probability of any human being getting into a pair of shorts like that now is not real high.
Look at those quads.
That's what you call tight fit.
I mean, this guy is built, man. You said it when we were at the Ohio State game.
Oh, absolutely.
The guys, they weren't wearing their jerseys, so you didn't see their, and I didn't know what Saquon's face looked like. And CeCe just said to me, he's like, guess which one of them's Barkley? There's 30 guys just jogging. They weren't running full speed.
Yeah.
And you could just, man, I was like, you got it. Like, he just stands out, man.
220, 6 foot. I mean, he is packed full of muscle. Workout phenom like you, Jenna. Loves to be in the weight room.
It does.
Powerlifting champ. I mean, he's a special player. Zero character flaws. Yeah. And as you can see, the manufacturer's not used to that type of package. You know.
In those shorts, it looks like it looked like they painted them on him. That's remarkable, man.
They look good, though. I mean, they fit him well.
The guys, by the way, our production staff thinks they're really cute, so they want me to call them Tiger Woods or Phil Fickelson.
I know, they've been saying it in my ear. I chose to ignore it.
But they wouldn't stop telling me.
Same thing. Same thing.
Bubba Quadson. That one was funny. That was well done. All right, I like it now.
Stories to start your morning now. Yesterday, the NBA announced the 3 finalists for MVP, the Beard, the King, and the Brow. I wonder what their nicknames are. The winners of these awards will be announced on June 25th. Chris, who do you think should win MVP this year?
Oh, James Harden.
All right.
Outstanding. The last 2 of the last 3 years, he should have taken home one of those trophies. They didn't give it to him. This is not a makeup year. He deserves it, and he's going to win it.
He's going to win it. There is some intrigue. Will LeBron or Anthony Davis finish second? I think that'll be very close. I'm also curious how close Harden comes to unanimous. I don't think he'll be unanimous. I think LeBron and Anthony Davis will get 4 or 5 votes, but Harden's going to run away with it.
The NBA also announced the 3 finalists for Rookie of the Year and for Rookie of the Year who sat out the first year. They combined both awards. Ben Simmons, Donovan Mitchell, and Jason Tatum. Nick, how great can this rookie class be all time?
Well, when you consider the fact that all year long the discussion was Simmons or Mitchell, and now after this postseason, I think a lot of people are saying, man, I think Tatum might end up being the best of all of them.
Oh, yeah.
As far as top 3 goes, it's not quite LeBron, Wade, Bosh, but it's a hell of a rookie class, man.
Oh, you can make a case for all of them. Ben Simmons, he was the most consistent. His triple-double numbers during his rookie year, outstanding. Donovan Mitchell, he's the real rookie of the year, true rookie of the year, drafted last year. And Tatum, if you throw in the playoffs, you can make a case for him being outstanding with the multiple 20-point games in a row, the most in franchise history. So you can't be wrong. Any of the players you select in that group.
On to the NFL now. Cowboys defensive end Randy Gregory is officially applying for reinstatement with the NFL today. He was suspended all of last season for violating the NFL substance abuse policy. The Cowboys drafted him in the 2nd round back in 2015. CeCe, how big of a boost would getting Gregory back be for the Dallas Cowboys defense?
It would help offset the lack of playmakers they have on their offense as far as wide receivers. If you pair him with DeMarcus Lawrence on the other side, you put him in a rush specialist situation, getting him back into the league. He is a guy that for multiple years can have 10 sacks for your organization. And you got to give credit to Jerry Jones here. People behind the scenes don't know about Jerry, the love he has for players, but he has gotten Randy the best care that money could buy. He's hung in there with him when a lot of people have given up on him. I also wrote a letter this week to the NFL for Randy to get him reinstated. I've been part of his overall recovery. He has done a great job in completing one of the most strenuous programs out there in the country, so we are cheering for Randy Gregory.
And just quickly, the Cowboys in 2015 take Gregory, who's a first-round talent, falls because of the drug issues. 2016 take Jalen Smith, a first-round talent who falls because of an injury. Both the front seven defensive guys. If they get both those guys back, the defense looks very different.
All right, last, we have Des Bryant. Yesterday, Des replied to a tweet that asked if he regrets not taking the Ravens' 3-year contract offer, the only offer he's received since being let go by the Cowboys. Des tweeted back, nope, not one bit. Then he proceeded to blame the media for tarnishing his character. Cece, do you think Des should have signed with the Ravens?
No, I don't think he should. There's plenty of time left. I wouldn't sign a deal that I'm not happy with, because even though you're on a team, the player's not happy. So Des is motivated, but being stuck there, and from a skill set standpoint, I don't believe it's the best fit for him. As far as the quarterback that they do not have a good intermediate or short passing game. Joe Flacco throws the ball down the field. That's the best part of his throwing skill set. Dez is not that type of wide receiver. Him and Michael Crabtree are both that possession to intermediate wide receiver. Both of them are ex-receivers. So, no, I think Dez did the best thing for him. Continue to work out. Continue to hear from other teams, because I believe that would have been a long-term mistake, and because he wasn't happy.
And also keep this in mind. It wasn't a one-year offer. It was a 3-year offer. Why does that matter? We just saw Dez struggle with a rookie quarterback and second-year quarterback in Dak Prescott. Who's going to be the Ravens quarterback, we believe most likely, a year from now, if not sooner? Lamar Jackson.
Yes.
A guy that is going to have a learning curve as far as throwing at the NFL level. I think that's fair to say.
The same thing with Dak, what he went through with Dak in Dallas.
Exactly right. So I understand I understand why Dez would say no to that. I don't understand why Dez is on Twitter as much as I am. I don't. I would like to think that if I were looking for a job, I would not be maybe actively antagonizing folks on Twitter. I know it can be hard. I know how powerful this thing can be. But I don't think that's helping Dez. I don't know how much it's hurting him, but I'm certain it's not helping him as far as trying to get the right team to offer him a job.
You guys both make a great point. I didn't factor in the fact that Lamar Jackson could very well be their quarterback, and then you're playing with a young quarterback again. But you think he turned down that job because you don't think he fit in schematically and not because he wasn't happy with the money?
It's the money and the length of the contract. You shouldn't sign a bad contract. Just because you're out of work, you can't be desperate. Dez is going to get a job in the NFL, and it doesn't fit his strong suit. Now, their organization, they do fit players like Dez. They do fit in, but I still believe there are better fits out there for Dez. Potentially, Seattle. They had Brandon Marshall in last week, and if they're looking at Brandon Marshall, they're looking at a big receiver, possession. They should be looking at Dez Bryant, and they can handle his personality in that locker room with the style for which they. So Seattle, I believe, is another team that will be looking at a wide receiver as we get closer to training camp.
Okay. We got ourselves a basketball series out west. Houston tied up the conference finals with a big win last night, aggressive on both ends of the court. Houston went at Steph Curry hard, and it worked, as Steph couldn't find his shot, going 1 for 8 on three-pointers. Kevin Durant, however, stellar, again, pouring in 38 points in the loss to Houston. Afterwards, KD said, quote, "Hey, expletive happens. We're not invincible. We're not the juggernauts of the NBA. We're a good team, but that's not a great team. But that's a great team, rather, on the other end as well." Nick, you think the Warriors can be beaten now, or was last night the outlier game?
We will see if last night was the outlier game. I think a lot of people had Warriors in 5 and thought the one game the Rockets would win is Game 2 in Houston. So we'll see if those people are proven correct. Do I think they can win? Yes, I think they can win. And I've been trying to make sure when it comes to my Warriors analysis, it's actual analysis rather than hopeful optimism, because of my concern about whether or not this team is going to go on some run that removes any competitive balance from the NBA over the next few years. But the Rockets yesterday, aside from P.J. Tucker, nobody played out way over their skis. It's not like, oh, there's no way they can play that level of defense again. That's the defense they played all year. There's no way they can, turn the ball over like that few times or force. They played a typical Rockets home game last night. They got 2 more of those home games theoretically in this series. Like, do I think they can win? Absolutely. Do I think they're the favorites anymore like I did going into the series? No, because they no longer have home court in this series. But can they win? I do believe they can win.
But you would say there's no way that only one of the 4 big Warrior stars are going to actually show up.
What I would say is I think Draymond offensively is going to be limited all series. And so
Clay
I think, listen, Clay was limited last night, and Steph's been limited in both games. But I also don't think KD is necessarily going to average 38 a game for the series. He might average 32. I don't know if he's going to average 38. Go ahead.
Well, it's the flow of the game. He realized he had to do more in game number 1 because Steph didn't get off. KD got him off to a great start, so he's going with the flow of the game. Clay couldn't get hot in game number 2, so he's got to get more buckets. They go more isolation to him. But the fact that Houston, they talk about they didn't change their style, they didn't do isolation. Can they beat this team? Yes, if they play at the pace they did in last night's game, they can. During the regular season, they averaged 17 dunks and layups a game. Last night, they get 24. Well, how'd they get most of those? Either off of makes or off the rebound. Immediately, they got on the attack. So you don't want to play against Golden State, just like Cleveland in the other series. You don't want to play against their half-court defense. Celtics probably best in the league. Well, the numbers prove best in the league. And the Warriors probably number 2 or 3 in the league. So get out on the break early. Try to get some fast break or layups. And if not, going against that defense, unsettled, you still have a better percentage of getting a good shot.
And listen, I know obviously Houston wanted to be up 2-0 in this spot. But I also know, without a shadow of a doubt, this isn't conjecture. This is from talking to people around the team. Houston, from the top down, they've had 1 goal all year long. Can we get the Warriors to a best of 3 where 2 of those 3 games are in Houston? What does that mean? It means get home court advantage in the playoffs and have it tied at 2 after 4 games. Can we get in that situation? Because Houston knows everything Daryl Morey's done, D'Antoni, Harden, MVP, they know that the Warriors are the more talented team. They know that the Warriors, over a long enough horizon of a sample size, will beat every team in this league in a series. So they want to shorten it as much as possible, add some variance. That's part of what the three-pointer does. Now they know if we can get a split in Golden State, we've done what we set out this year to do. Have it be a best of 3 with the first and the third game in our building and see what the hell happens.
The other thing they want to do is play the kind of basketball that got them there, is what I hear from every single member of that team and the coaching staff. We want to nail our three-pointers. We want to play whatever type of isolation ball we want to play. And last night they did. They hit 16 three-pointers. When they hit 16 three-pointers or more a game, they're 42-3. The Rockets.
Great number.
That's an incredible number. They did that. They played their game. All their shots were going in. And it wasn't just from James Harden like it was in Game 1.
Yeah, and it's also not only the shooting, not only the threes. The record there is outstanding with the threes. 16 of those in last night's game. Defensively, how many quarters can they hold the Warriors under scoring 30 points? Last night's game, not 1 quarter. Scored 29 twice. All right, but not getting to 30. That is the number. The rest of the number for the NBA, the other teams, you want to try to keep them under 25 points. When you're playing against the Warriors, you want to keep them under 30. So not only the shooting numbers, you got to watch what they do from three-point line. Watch how many times they get to the hole and get dunks on our layups, and watch from a defensive standpoint, because the only way they're going to get a championship in Houston is if they continue that, keeping the Warriors under those explosive 35, 38-point quarters.
And I want to talk, you mentioned Steph and Clay, so I want to talk about them each for a moment and then explain how Kevin Durant leads into that. Like, Steph, one of the reasons he's struggling is because they are making him work on the defensive end, because they are being as good as any team I've seen in recent memory, staying true to, we are not letting him have 6 inches of space. Now, because of that, he's been able to get to the rim quite a bit in this series, but he's not getting open jump shots. See, what was your note on Klay Thompson when CP3 was guarding him? What's he shooting?
Oh, yes. Shooting,
was it 25%?
25%, 16% for three-point range.
All right, well, CP3 is one of the greatest point guard defenders we've ever seen. Like, so that there's a method to that. And then there's Kevin Durant. Like, if we could show America what Kevin Durant's totals are in this series, 75 points, that jumps off the page.
That's crazy.
6 rebounds, 1 assist.
Not so crazy.
And 1 total steal and block.
The 1 assist is remarkable.
It's remarkable. So why do I bring that up? They are refusing to leave guys to help on KD. They are refusing to let KD's offense be a virus in a good way that affects his teammates. That we're so scared of what KD's doing that he all of a sudden is getting other guys flowing. If you can hold, so 38 points sounds, it is amazing. But if we're talking like 38 points and 1 assist, or 37 points and 0 assists he's had in these 2 games.
Then those are the only points.
Right. That's the same line as a 25 and 5 night.
Right.
Right. And when it comes to points created. So that's, the Rockets have been earnest in that effort, and it's been well, last night it was successful for them.
All right, we're going to get back to football on the other side. Coming up, does Aaron Rodgers still have a lot to prove? That's next. First things first. Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by former head coach Eric Mangini.
What's
going on, Eric?
Good
Coach?
morning. Good to see you guys.
How are
Everything
you?
good?
Yeah, excited to talk about all the great topics we have.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're excited to do it.
Well, we're going to talk about a great quarterback.
Okay.
Last season, Aaron Rodgers was limited to just 7 games with a broken collarbone. As a result, the Green Bay Packers missed the playoffs for the first time since 2008. Probably just a coincidence, I'm sure. He recently was asked about what drives him entering his 14th season. He said that he's driven by, quote, sustained greatness, and added that he wants to have a fairy tale ending with the Packers. Coach, does Aaron Rodgers need to win another Super Bowl to cement his greatness?
No, not at all. When you look at Aaron Rodgers' numbers versus other great quarterbacks at this time in his career, it's pretty impressive. He's got more touchdowns, more yards, less interceptions than Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Dan Fouts, Joe Montana, Brett Favre, who am I missing? Who am I? Drew Brees.
It's almost everyone but Marino, right? As far as at this point in his career.
Yeah, the numbers are incredible. And when you look at it versus Brett Favre, he's got, I think it's 80 less interceptions and 60 more touchdowns. They have about the same record. They have an identical record. So his numbers comparatively are impressive, but in coaching against them, there's so many things that he does well. His accuracy, especially his accuracy on the run, is amazing. You can be in tight man-to-man coverage with a very small window, and he's able to put it in spots that you could give other quarterbacks 10 chances to do it, and they couldn't get it there. So I don't think he has anything to prove, but I would like him to see. Or would like to see him have more Super Bowl wins. I think he should have more Super Bowl wins.
And certainly appearances. Like, it's the one win, but it's also just the one appearance. Listen, I'm not old enough to have watched live Dan Fouts, but I hear Chris and you talk about how ahead.
Really, we're gonna go there?
No, well, no.
I'm not old enough. I'm really old.
No. I didn't say Johnny Unitas.
Chris.
I didn't say that's not what I was doing. I was trying.
You boys were walking there with leather
you guys,
helmets.
You're twisting something negative. I was trying to be.
Okay.
I heard you guys both talk about. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I've heard you guys both talk about how almost ahead of his time he was with what he was able to do throwing the football in that era. Dan Marino I was able to see, and Dan Marino, what he was able to do from basically his second year in the league is when he took Miami to the Super Bowl. I have felt that in my era of watching football, no one's a better thrower of the ball than Aaron Rodgers. That as far as raw quarterback talent, ability to make every throw, tight windows, whatever it is, I've never seen someone better. The reason, though, that he is not discussed as Montana or Brady or even Elway, like, is he the greatest quarterback ever, is the Super Bowls. It is purely the Super Bowls. If he wins just one more Super Bowl, I would say people will start having the Rodgers-Manning argument. People will start having for a quarterback, to me, if you want to be considered the greatest at that position ever, you have to have 2 things. Amazing statistical resume and multiple championships. It's why for a long time, fairly or unfairly, Peyton wasn't in the discussion until he had this last act of his career with Denver, getting to another Super Bowl, setting more records, and then ultimately getting another championship. That's the one thing Rodgers is missing from a historical context, even if our eye test says this guy's as good as anyone we've ever seen.
He is as good. Dan Marino and myself, I'm a little bit older than Nick. Dan Marino and Aaron Rodgers are the They have the best. They're the best throwers of the football in the last 40 years. Warren Moon is very, very close. But I'll just keep it at Dan and Aaron. The reason why Dan is not in the conversation, one of the greatest quarterbacks, is because he didn't win any Super Bowls. Went to one Super Bowl, didn't have the support around him, didn't have the running game. So maybe in our eyes, Aaron Rodgers, like, we know how great he is. We know how hard he is to defend. As a wide receiver, man, what it would be like to play with him. But in the era where this is what we judge the quarterbacks by. Since Aaron Rodgers came into the league, the Super Bowls have gone like this. Big Ben, Peyton, Eli, Big Ben, Breeze, Rodgers, Eli, Flacco, Russ, Brady, Peyton, Brady, Nick Foles. So in this era, we've had a couple guys that have won multiple Super Bowls. Now, you can't retire as Aaron Rodgers and say, wow, when did you play? Man, I played in the era where Ben won 2, Eli won 2, Peyton won 2, Brady won 2. Like, but I only won 1. Now, I don't consider that not a Hall of Fame career, but if Eli, and especially Big Ben, because they were supported by their team, if they got a couple Super Bowls, then if he's going to be included in that class, he's going to have to be able to get another Super Bowl. Not to affirm what I believe in him, but based on the way people judge the quarterbacks, Coach.
It's interesting, though, when you look at Peyton's last Super Bowl, you wouldn't look at that and say Peyton drove that last Super Bowl.
Absolutely.
It was the defense that drove that Super Bowl. But his
different than John Elway.
Yeah, the Elway, and when you look at Eli and the defenses that they had in New York, and so, and even Big
Ben's first one, for sure.
Big Ben's first one, a great defensive team. So I don't think it's fair. I don't think that's necessarily the most fair evaluation is how many Super Bowls they get, because you'd have to put with Peyton's. How much credence do you want to
give that last one?
Yeah,
Peyton was much more impressive the year in Denver that they lost the Super Bowl.
Yes,
you know
those 2 years, yes.
The
numbers.
But the year they got to the Super Bowl and got crushed by Seattle. And
amazing.
He was unbelievable. The year before that, he was unbelievable. And then that last year, remember, I mean, he was injured, but then they were sticking with Osweiler, and then they only went to Peyton at the end of it.
And when you look at this year, as much as Brady did in this past Super Bowl, he couldn't overcome what they were doing defensively. I mean, he gave them every single opportunity, the numbers, the points, all those things, but he couldn't overcome it. And in football, if you don't have that complementary or at least adequate defense and special teams, you're always going to be swimming upstream.
So if we give Peyton credit for having won a Super Bowl, even though statistically it wasn't that impressive, what's more important? I mean, could you have great stats and not have the Super Bowl, or you could be Joe Flacco and have a Super Bowl and not have the numbers?
Listen, there are 2 names on that list that stand out like a sore thumb. One is Nick Foles, one is Joe Flacco.
Yes.
Just period, point blank. Like, those are 2 guys that we're listing other guys where if you take those 2 guys off, the worst quarterback on there is Eli, and Eli going to end up in the Hall of Fame. You know, I mean, I think most likely he will with the 2 Super Bowls.
But Foles and Flacco.
Foles and Flacco are but they're also the outliers on the list.
Yes.
But the other
supported by their team.
Exactly. But what's odd is when we're talking about pure passers on the list, the 2 best pure passers might be the 2 guys on that list that only have 1. Breeze and Rodgers. 2 guys, like, I think I think Brady is in the argument for forget quarterback, greatest football player ever, if such a thing exists. But that's not because you watch him throw the football and you say, oh my God, it's perfect. Like, Breeze has done it. What Breeze has done with just the raw accumulation of yards, what Rodgers has done with different guys at wide receiver, not a ton of all-pro caliber weapons around him, a team that doesn't spend a ton of money in free agency. It's remarkable, but I just know I didn't set the rules on how we evaluate these guys. I didn't set the rule that Dan Marino gets disqualified from the discussion, but Dan Marino's been disqualified from the discussion. Like, Warren Moon doesn't really get to participate in the discussion. Like, those have been the rules that we kind of inherited. It's why you look at Elway's stats. Elway's stats are, even when you adjust for era, are not impressive. The dude went to 5 Super Bowls and won 2 of them, so he gets elevated because of that.
Yeah, and where are the rules? Like, who sets the rules in terms of what we can discuss as
the
great?
Take Council?
I haven't been to that rule committee meeting. I think that if you were doing a draft and you had all those quarterbacks on the board and you were starting a team, forget about any rules or who would you want to take. And I think that Aaron Rodgers would be right up at the top of the list.
All right. Coach, we'll see you a little bit later in the show.
All right.
Drop the mic, Coach.
Coming up. That's why I ended it there.
He did it. He actually
Did you do it? Barely heard it. How did the Rockets figure out how to beat the Warriors? Steven Jackson in next with all that insight next on First Things First. Back here on First Things First, Steven Jackson is here. Steven, you're not just a tough guy when we introduce you. I watched your workout. Steven, let me tell you what Steven did. He put a camera, hit live. He didn't need to entertain. He didn't anything. He just went and did his workout. If you want to join, come join and watch. And if you don't, you know. And just put it out there,
Steven Jackson. Did you get some shots up yesterday, too?
Yeah, I worked on I worked on my game for about 2 hours at the NBPA gym. They got a nice facility over there, man. Nice facility.
Man, Big Three folks going to be
they're going to pay.
in for it.
I led in scoring last year. They're going to pay this year, too.
Scoring champ, Steven
Killer
Jackson.
threes.
All right. Well, we also want you for your insight. Big game last night. So much for the Rockets being out of this series. So much for ISO ball not working for them this postseason. So much for the unstoppable offense of the Golden State Warriors. The Rockets were good and aggressive, and unlike Game 1, they got help from players not named James Harden last night. P.J. Tucker and Eric Gordon combined for 49 points. Here's their head coach after the game.
We are who we are, and we had to be who we are. We just did it better, longer. Guys believe it, and we're not going to change anything up. That would be silly on my part to panic. I mean, you don't do that. We're very comfortable about who we are, and we can beat anybody, anywhere, at any time, playing the way we play.
So we had that mindset tonight after a loss to be the aggressor, and we have to keep that same mentality in Game 3 and Game 4. Like, no matter where we are, if we have that mindset, we're in good hands.
They were desperate tonight, and they played like it, and we didn't. And the results showed.
Steven Jackson took some issue with what head coach Mike D'Antoni was saying. Talk
Anybody,
to us.
anywhere, any place, anytime.
Okay, D'Antoni, you wasn't talking like this after Game 1. I didn't hear crickets. All I heard was crickets. You wasn't this confident after Game 1. We are who we are. Okay, we understand that. But thank you for letting us know that you changed your offense, because y'all didn't do the same thing. James Harden didn't have 6,000 dribbles. Chris Paul didn't have 6,000 dribbles. Y'all shared the ball. They did what I said yesterday on the show.
Yes.
They gave the guys who you expect to guard all game a chance to be good on offense.
Gave them some love.
You share the ball. We all said ISO ball wasn't going to win. They trying to stick in their ways and say it in the media, but they did not play like that last night. They shared the ball. Good thing about it, on defense, they was the hit first team. Golden State was the hit first team the first game. They came out and played with a sense of urgency, did what they had to do. Eric Gordon, I think he can play like this the rest of this series. I think he can be solid and score points. P.J. Tucker, absolutely not. Okay?
You can't depend on that?
12 20-point games in 522 games. Okay?
I think you said P.J. Tucker couldn't score 22 again if they locked him in the arena.
By himself. Okay? If you expect
on 88% shooting,
if you expect this P.J. Tucker to get 22 points a game for the rest of the series, you lost your mind, okay? You don't know anything about basketball. But great game for them last night. They did what they had to do to win this game, going back to Golden State.
Here's the only thing you said I take issue with is they were equally as isolation heavy in Game 2 as Game 1, but they were totally different types of isolation. How they did it. Your point on the dribbling, it wasn't a 14-second isolation where James Harden's just cross the whole time. It was quicker isolations that led to open shots for the role players. It was driving kicks. In Game 1, Harden had 26 of those isolations by himself. Yesterday, he had 16. CP3 had 16.
Nick, how many times did Harden dribble the ball in Game number 1?
550 times, according to Spectrum.
And how many shots did he take?
In Game 1?
500.
No.
Right. But it was night and day. It's night and day.
The dribbling note is he dribbled the ball 550 times. Steph, KD, and Clay dribbled combined 549. The broadcast did a great job showing that. So that you just visually you saw last night, even though it was still ISO heavy, it was back to the type of basketball I saw the Rockets play all year, which was the excellent defense, top 6 defense in the regular season, top 3 defense in the postseason. They shared the basketball, and they ran on you. Like, that's who they were this regular season.
Yeah, the fast break points and the defense. That's the difference in this Houston team, not only the depth for which they had. I like that they went with a tighter rotation. Now, let me tell you about your boy, Luke Richard. he can't come off the bench again. Next time he come off the bench, need to be at the parade. Like, he was awful in quarter number 1 after being bad in quarter number 2.
Layups, man.
But at the end of the day, it's about defense. Houston, are they going to be different in the playoff than any other Houston team we've seen? 2016, where they rank as far as defense, 26. This year, a top 10 team, ranked number 6. And it starts with their point guard in Chris Paul. When he was guarding Clay, when Clay was going against everyone else, Harden was guarding, he's shooting 50%, 60% from three-point line. When Gordon is guarding, he's shooting 40 and 33%. When CP is on Clay, it's been the matchup of the first two games. He's shooting 25% from the field and 16% from three-point. So we can talk about their offense. We can talk about fast break points. All those things true. But their defense is what sets them apart from any other team that we have seen that just played at pace and shot threes.
They were real physical last night. And I even though KD had a great game, I think Ariza set the tone. He came out, he was banging KD, he was talking to him, getting him to talk trash. I think that got everybody else on the team going. And like I said, Chris Paul, he's a great defender. He knows how to dirty the game up. Trust me, he's a feisty little guy. But I guarantee you he won't be able to stop Clay for the rest of the series like that.
Their goal is not stop KD, because you saw that. They're letting KD do what he wants to do.
Yeah, you can't do that anyway.
Correct, but look what happened to the rest of the team.
Right.
For example, Steph Curry. What happened with Steph Curry last night? He just hasn't been able to find his shot, and he whether he's injured or not, he just doesn't look like he's comfortable or has control over his matchup out there.
Yeah, wait, let's address the injury thing. Mm-hmm. Do you think he's injured, or do you care?
I don't care, and I don't think he's hurt. If you're out there on the court at this point, you're healthy. James and Chris Paul did a great job, but I was about to say something about KD. He can lead this team all he wants. He can score all the points, but last night that team looked like they was fresh out of V-Live strip club at the beginning of the game. They was
V-Live got shut down for not paying its taxes.
No, V-Live have strip clubs all around.
The one in Houston got shut down for not paying its taxes.
It's a different name now.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes,
Go ahead, as you were.
Literally couldn't be more inside.
G5. You got it.
My bad. But they look like they came out.
No other morning show will have that.
None. Shout out to DC. My boy DC. They came out just like they was tired, like they fresh out the club. And
Making
they had
it rain
so
a different
many
type of way, Jenna.
Exactly.
Okay.
So many turnovers. Draymond had like 4 or 5 unforced turnovers. They were just they looked like we showed up today. Let's hurry up and get this game over with so we can get back to Golden State. We did what we need to. That's how they started the game off. And KD, the only one came to play last night.
And I'm not going to sit here and be like the Warriors. They lost game 2. They're screwed. I'm not saying that. I think most people, if they picked Warriors in 5, which was a popular pick, thought the one game Houston would win would be game 2 at home. But what I will say is Golden State has, in the series, the only series they've lost in this era, everyone focuses on the final 3 games against Cleveland, when LeBron went off, when they blew the 3-1 lead. The turning point in that series...
They didn't have KD.
I understand that, but just stay with me for a second. They were up 2-0 against Cleveland, and in Game 3, they came out, didn't care. They could have won the series that night. And in the first quarter, I believe in that game, they were down 21 points almost instantly. They did not come out with a sense of urgency. I feel like last night, they could have won the series. Mm-hmm. If you steal the first 2 on the road, and now all of a sudden Houston not only has to win 4 out of 5 against you, but 3 of those games are in Golden State, you're finished. They could have won, and they didn't come out with a sense of urgency. I know the Rockets were desperate, but the Warriors could have been desperate to win the championship last night.
Those first 6 minutes were critical. When they threw the ball away, when they weren't even getting attempts. So I don't like the fact that, they could have taken over the series. Yeah, but there's a championship team on the other side that won 65 games for a reason. Sure. You mention it, but the only reason why I know it is because you tell me all the time. It's only 20 teams won 65 games. Well, the Houston Rockets are one of those teams. Right. And 15 of those teams have won a championship.
And so to get back to Jenna's question on Steph, I think, Steph is, when he is locked in, he is almost unguardable because he can pull up from 37 feet, and it looks like a good shot.
Steph is unguardable when they don't let him touch him. When you start getting in the playoff, Steph Curry, it's a different thing.
Well, that's what
because you can be more physical with
That's
it.
what I wanted to ask you about.
A lot of players.
How much of Steph's struggles in this series, we've seen Steph struggle in a few NBA finals, is the other team will target him and make him work defensively when you're playing in this series or in the NBA finals. There's usually nowhere to hide defensively that you can have him go stand in the corner, so he's using energy there. The refs let you play a little bit more so you can bump him a little bit more. There were a bunch of times last night when he did get to the rim, he thought he should have got an and one. They didn't give him the and one.
But he played through it.
And he played through it. Like, how much of that is that this level, not level, but this time of year, this type of basketball doesn't exactly fit his strengths with his body type and with just his overall ability to play on both ends?
Well, we can't say it don't fit his strengths. He's a two-time champ, two-time MVP. So you can't say that. It's just Houston did a better job of being more physical from the jump last night. I don't think it's going to be like this whole series. Yeah, he's been battling injuries and all that, but I guarantee you, after this Game 3, we won't be saying that. I think he's going to get his offense back. I'm not saying they're going to beat Houston, but I'm saying he's going to get his offense back, and he's going to play well. Every time you go home, after playing the first 2 games on the road, you go home feeling great. Just being in your arena, sleeping in your own bed like we talked about the other day, it's a different feeling. And we talking about a team like that, going home, one of the best home teams in the league, I'm not worried about it.
One thing watch for Steph, too, the refs aren't giving him the call. He shot 1 free throw yesterday. Got fouled a bunch of times in the lane. But if he shoots 1 free throw, that doesn't play to his strong suit.
But I'll be worried if he was whining about calls afterwards and not getting them. He played through it. They took their L, like Katie say. We're not the NBA juggernauts. We're human.
By the way, in an odd turn of events, the house that, because they started their Hampton 5 last night, the house that Katie rented in the Hamptons when they all met together was rented, put on the market
on the market for $15 million.
Nice.
Action Jack.